There's definitely Kerr Kriisa news to discuss, so I guess I'll go ahead and pull that up first and foremost. Let me share this screen with you guys, and we'll talk a little bit about this edition for WVU basketball. Which I believe to be probably the biggest transfer addition for WVU basketball in quite some time. I'd say it's the biggest transfer addition in general for WVU since maybe Will Greer. The one that you could name would be JT Daniels, but I'm talking results based. I guess Will Greer was really the one I go back to on the football side. But even if you want to go back to JT Daniels, I think this is the biggest WVU basketball transfer in the transfer portal era, really, that they've landed. Eric Stevenson was a big get for West Virginia, indeed, and he ended up being a great player for the Mountaineers this year. But even he wasn't nearly as highly touted as a player like Kerr Kriisa. Let me talk a little bit about him here. This article coming from Jonathan Giovanni over on ESPN.com back when he announced his commitment to the Mountaineers. And the thing that I really like from it is the quotes here from Kerr Kriisa. I wanted to start from zero. Kriisa said, I didn't want to go anywhere where I had pre-existing relationships. I need to challenge myself. I really like how they recruited me. Jade Kuntz and the entire staff. And to me, that comment kind of stands out there in that sentence because I know originally when he entered the transfer portal, he was actually crystal balled to go to Xavier because of the prior connection to Sean Miller, who had been the coach that recruited him to Arizona. Sean Miller, as we know, the coach at Arizona previously before going to Xavier. But this shows that, of course, that wasn't ever the case. He wanted to, have a fresh start, as he says here. And then the final couple sentences here is what really stuck out to me the most from his statements. He says, when I saw the old truck that Bob Huggins is driving, I knew that guy was loyal. Now I need to start playing some defense. And the quote about playing some defense specifically is what stands out to me the most, just because that's kind of been the main knock on Kerr Kriisa is his lack of defensive play, I guess you could say, is the way that I would put it. Is, that's the one knock that people have stated about Kerr Kriisa. But I like the fact that he comes out, addresses it directly, and knows that if he's coming to play for Bob Huggins, he's going to have to play some defense. So to me, that really speaks volumes. I think it's going to be a good thing that the one weakness to his game, I guess you could say, he's ready to focus on, and hopefully Bob Huggins can help him develop that side of his game, because Kerr Kriisa is a player that's a pro prospect already, and if he can get better on the defensive side of the game, then he can really, be a guaranteed draft pick, even though I think he probably already is. So I can't, understate this enough how big of a pickup this is for West Virginia and for Bob Huggins. I know one of the big things people have been saying in recent years in regards to WVU basketball is that they haven't had a true point guard. That's been one of their downfalls. A lot of people have said is the lack of a true point guard. I mean, even Javon Carter, who plays point guard in the league now, Deuce McBride, who plays point guard in the NBA now as well. Both those guys were kind of considered combo guards coming into West Virginia. And then Kedrian Johnson, I'm not trying to knock on him either, who led the West Virginia offense this year. We saw him have a ton of great games this season, 20-plus points, but he was, of course, a score-first guy. He was actually a defensive guy that developed into a score-first guy this year in his final season, which I talked about a lot in the CRW Hoops podcast episodes. But I think getting Kerr Kriisa gives West Virginia their first true, quote-unquote point guard that you've had in quite some time, probably since, Jawan Staten. And I think, before then you had a nice run of what you would probably call true point guards, guys like Darius Nichols, Joe Mazzulla, etc. But since, probably Staten, West Virginia hasn't really had what I would call a true point guard, and a lot of Mountaineer Nation has been clamoring for that. Now with the addition of Kerr Kriisa, you get that. And in regards to proof of how much of a true point guard he is, let me continue here in this article. Kriisa's track record of winning games as the starting point guard at Arizona is unmatched by any player in the NCAA transfer portal, going 57-11 in the past 2 seasons at Arizona. So let me go ahead and restate that for you guys. 57 wins versus 11 losses in the past 2 seasons at Arizona, in which he was the team's starting point guard. And we know the point guard equivalent to kind of the quarterback of the team in basketball terms, if you're relating it to football. So really, he was a leader of that squad that won 57 games over the past 2 seasons and only lost 11. He won the Pac-12 tournament championship this season, helping Arizona to a number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament while leading the conference in assists and shooting 37% from three-point range. The prior season, he helped Arizona to a number 1 tournament seed as the Pac-12 champions, again leading the conference in assists. So the past 2 seasons led the conference in assists in the Pac-12 Power 5 conference, obviously, as we all know. Also led them to a number 1 seed in the conference tournament. Great performances there, and great seeds in the NCAA tournament, despite their performances in the tournament kind of being lacking in those 2 seasons. We know that Arizona was one of the top teams in college basketball the past 2 seasons, and Kerr Kriisa was leading that squad. So if those numbers aren't enough proof for how big of addition this is for West Virginia this upcoming basketball season, and why I think it's the biggest addition for West Virginia in the transfer portal era, he also picked West Virginia over a slurry of schools. I mentioned Xavier already with the Sean Miller connections, but also Ole Miss, Arkansas, and Nebraska was the one that came up. They came within a visit after West Virginia. But, I mentioned in my video that I talked about Kerr Kriisa here on the channel that when West Virginia gets a player on campus, a lot of times that's the ceiling factor for the Mountaineers. Morgantown's a great selling point. West Virginia has great facilities in both major sports, basketball and football, and I think that played a good part in landing Kerr Kriisa. But if his numbers, his winning record at Arizona aren't enough to sell you, how about his past experience playing in international play against players that are now professionals and stars at the professional level? As you see here, ending this article, Kriisa, born in Estonia, garnered significant experience last summer at the FIBA Eurobasket. As I accidentally switched the tabs, they were still getting used to this PC and this new mouse, there. Garnered significant experience last summer at the FIBA Eurobasket. His national team competed against the likes of Luka Doncic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, of course, we know Giannis, and Lauri Markkanen, making him one of the most battle-tested point guards in college basketball. 1 season of eligibility remaining, but we hope it's a good one here in Mountaineer Nation. So that was a great recruiting win for West Virginia, who actually already had the number 1 transfer portal class in the nation before the addition of Kerr Kriisa. West Virginia, with the additions of Omar Silveria, who we talked about in the past, and the additions of Jose Perez as well, who we've also talked about in the past. Let me share this with you guys real quick. Let me see if I can pull this up. We know the transfers out for West Virginia players that played minimal roles the past season: Josiah Davis, and in-state point guard and Jamel King, who only played in a handful of games. But now the transfers in for West Virginia, 2 guards that we already knew about: Omar Silverio, the most recent one that I've talked about here on the channel, and then Jose Perez, we all know about, well accomplished. Talked about him last season. Should have been granted a year of eligibility, wasn't, but he's eligible for this upcoming season. Has said that he will return to the Mountaineer basketball team. So you already had, with those 2 in tow, already had what was ranked by On3 in many recruiting services as the number 1 transfer portal class in college basketball heading into this season. And then on top of that, you add the number 1 point guard in the transfer portal in Kerr Kriisa. So West Virginia doing an excellent job in the transfer portal.